I'm Oliver Stone. Welcome to Exhuming JFK. To research the JFK assassination is to enter into a maze. For within the established narrative and assorted counter-narratives of the great American murder mystery are nested dozens, if not hundreds, of intersecting paths to truth and understanding. Avoiding the dead ends is important, as is not getting lost entirely. But for many, the first question is where to even begin.
I'm Dr. Cyril Wecht. In 2003, on the 40th anniversary of the assassination, and again in 2013, on the 50th anniversary, I was pleased to spearhead multi-day symposia hosted by my namesake institution, the Cyril H. Wecht Institute of Forensic Science and Law at Duquesne University. These conferences, the 40th entitled Into Evidence and the 50th entitled Passing the Torch, each convened many of the case's leading experts to share their analyses of what transpired on November 22, 1963, and why. Now, I'm equally pleased to introduce you to a video podcast series that will explore many of the ongoing mysteries surrounding the murder of our 35th president, drawing on that very same expertise. Each viewer will be directed by his or her own areas of interest, and this series is designed to highlight all of them. We hope they stimulate your interest and motivate you to dig deeper. Welcome to Exhuming JFK. As all Americans of a certain age have been taught in school, President Kennedy was shot and killed by a disgruntled former Marine and communist sympathizer named Lee Harvey Oswald, shooting from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository as the presidential motorcade passed by below. Oswald, who would get his retribution 2 days later in the form of a shot to the gut from an eccentric but patriotic local nightclub owner named Jack Ruby, is said to have committed this crime alone, expertly firing off 3 rounds in 6 seconds before escaping the scene undetected. But of course, as any mind of average intelligence knows, this school book lesson is a myth, an elaborate ruse constructed by the Warren Commission, enabled by President Johnson, and perpetuated ever since by a duped and defensive mainstream media. Whoever he was, expert or barely qualified marksman, disappointed communist or right-wing fanatic, doting family man or lone wolf, Oswald was a man of many strange and unsettling associations from Dallas to New Orleans and beyond. And, as suggested by the current legal altercation between the assassination research community and the federal government over CIA and FBI files still being concealed in contravention of the JFK Records Collection Act of 1992, some of those associations might simply be a bit too hot for the government to handle. In this episode of Exhuming JFK, we are going to revisit a few highlights from the Cyril H. Wecht Institute's 40th and 50th anniversary conferences, featuring presentations by some of the preeminent historians, legal investigators, and investigative journalists who have delved into this fascinating subject. Before we get to the experts, however, let us briefly visit the official story. Speaking at the Institute's 40th anniversary conference, Into Evidence, in 2003, then U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, Arlen Specter, who had launched his career as an eager young counsel to the Warren Commission, did his best to present Oswald's background as a settled matter.
Enormous speculation arose because of the background of Lee Harvey Oswald. Renounced his citizenship, as you know, went to the Soviet Union, married a Russian woman, was on the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, made a trip to Mexico City, a lot of suspicious circumstances, and the commission, as you know, concluded that there was no evidence of a conspiracy. If you want to prove that Arlen Specter was at Duquesne on November 22nd, it's not too hard. Find a witness or two. If you want to prove that Arlen Specter was not at Duquesne on November 22nd, you have to have somebody having every aspect of the locale under observation, so nobody can conclusively prove a negative. I think had there been a conspiracy, we would have come to light a long time ago. My experience is that nothing stays secret in our society, and somebody would have told about it a long time ago.
With all due respect to the late senator, who, after all, stepped into the proverbial lion's den to be with us that day, nothing about Oswald is clear. From his brief defection to and oddly seamless return from the Soviet Union to his murky six-day trip to Mexico City in September 1963. On this latest subject, for example, here's author, professor of political science, and retired U.S. Army Major John Newman, also presenting at our 2003 conference.
We see, I think, here in these cover stories and how the lone assassin idea was put together so quickly, diverse motives, from sources and methods to covering up incompetence and negligence and even preventing World War III. On the dark side, however, it appears, and I think one can make the argument credibly, that it would have permitted conspirators to avoid the scrutiny of investigation. That what happened in Mexico City was that the basis for the creation of the lone assassin story began and was used by the president 6 weeks later. So while you have agencies creating lies that cover up the evidence of their colossal failures, and the president's using, panicking, I would say, the Chief Justice and other senior leaders, the real perpetrators walk away scot-free.
Perhaps the strangest period of Oswald's short life was his time in New Orleans in the summer preceding the assassination, when his associations included everyone from an expatriated white Russian aristocrat to the disgraced former pilot turned mercenary. Addressing one such sighting, here's author and professor Joan Mellon, one of the leading authorities on District Attorney Jim Garrison's investigation and prosecution of Clay Shaw.
Were the Clinton and Jackson witnesses the only people who saw Oswald, Shaw, and Ferry together? No. The contractor who worked for Clay Shaw, supervising the renovations of his many French Quarter properties, is another witness who did not come forward. He had worked for Shaw for so many years that he had a key to the patio door of Shaw's house at 1313 Dauphine Street. He was accustomed to letting himself in when he had work to do. It was 12 noon, an hour when he would not expect to find Shaw at home during the summer of 1963. He let himself in through the patio door, only to discover in the large room that comprised the entire downstairs of Shaw's house, deep in conversation around a table, Shaw and Ferry and Lee Oswald. Usually Shaw made time to talk to him. This time, Shaw rose quickly to his feet and ushered the man out. "I'm engaged in a conference right now," Shaw said. Jim Garrison did receive information about this witness, but was not able to follow up.
Back in Dallas that fall, the so-called sole assassin must have been quite busy putting together the assassination of the U.S. president. But did Oswald even order the rifle, said to have inflicted all the wounds? Let's hear what educator and author Jim DiEugenio has to say.
According to the Warren Commission, Oswald orders the rifle on March the 12th. That's the postmark on the envelope. And according to Harry Holmes, the postal inspector, it's 10:30 in the morning. Okay, on the morning of March the 12th, according to the time cards in the Warren Commission, Oswald is at JCS, Jagger Child Stovall, and he's working on 9 jobs that morning. He doesn't get off until 12:15. All right, the lunch break is supposed to be from 12:15 to 12:45. And there's no indication on those time cards that he ever took time off to go to the post office to go ahead and mail the coupon. All right? All right, now, Here's another problem. It goes from Dallas to Klein's in Chicago in 24 hours. All right, and not only does it get there in 24 hours, according to Klein's, the order was mailed, received, processed, and deposited within 24 hours. And this, remember, this is like way before computers, where you couldn't do this stuff electronically. All right. William Waldman of Klein's testified on this, and he was never challenged on any of these statements. The questioning attorney was David Bellin.
And what about the contention that the CIA was not even aware of Oswald before the assassination? Let's listen to author and independent historian David Talbot, presenting here at the Institute's 50th anniversary conference, Passing the Torch, in 2013.
John McCloy was a wily lawyer, and he smelled conspiracy when he first joined the Warren Commission. He found the magic bullet theory highly improbable. He was disturbed by reports of Oswald's contacts with the intelligence world, and he was equally unnerved by the Zapruder film and the many eyewitnesses who pointed to the grassy knoll as the source of the fatal gunfire in Dealey Plaza that day. But then, in spring 1964, in the midst of the Warren Commission's investigation, McCloy accompanied his old friend, Dallin Dulles, on a plane trip to Dallas so they could examine the Dealey Plaza murder scene for themselves. Something happened on that trip that changed McCloy's mind. After returning from Dallas, he told friends that he was no longer, quote, a doubting Thomas about the Kennedy case. He was now prepared to embrace the theory that Oswald had acted alone and to finally, quote, lay the dust, as he put it, and put the troubling murder behind us.
So who was Lee Harvey Oswald? Thanks to the organized hit on him in the basement of the Dallas Public Safety Building on November 24, 1963, we shall never really know. But thanks to the diligent work of experts like the ones you have seen and heard from here, there remains much about him and his associations for curious minds to exhume. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Exhuming JFK. For more detailed information concerning this topic, please visit HistoryExhumed.com, where you will find collection-quality DVD sets of both the 40th and 50th anniversary symposia, as well as downloadable presentations and panel discussions by individual experts. You will also find my books on this subject, in particular, the JFK Assassination Dissected, Cause of Death, and Tales from the Morgue. All of these are available on Amazon and in many fine bookstores. I hope you will continue to follow all of the Exhuming JFK podcasts. I shall welcome your comments.